Good morning, everyone. My name is Levine Himlani, and I'm the founder and president of Founder Circle. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to invite you today to our inaugural Hackpreneurs podcast, sponsored by Founder Circle. Founder Circle started a few years ago, and we're close to 800 founders in 20 cities. And I get asked all the time, what are you doing to hack your personal life and your professional life? And so I've been chatting with my good friend, Ho Yin. And after many years of discussing it, we've turned it into a real podcast where we can summarize all the things that we're hearing on the ground across 800 founders on how best you can hack your personal life and your professional life. Our format is going to be weekly, talking about different things we're hearing on the ground across founders in Web3 to tech to biotech to climate to edtech, as well as more traditional businesses that are making new ground and breaking new ground in different areas. What's really important to us is our listeners, that you get a lot of value from this. Continue to work with us, continue to give us your feedback. And we just would love to provide as much value as possible to all those founders out there on a mission to change the world and a mission to change themselves. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce Ho Yin.
Hey guys, my name's Ho Yin. I'm the founder of Remo. I've started several startups. And I've most recently, my current company, we've reached 8 figures in USD in revenue, scales to like 150 people. I love Founder Circle. Livia and I, we've known each other for quite a while, right? And I just noticed we're like wearing the same color T-shirt. It's like the same color, like looks like the collar. So Levine and I, we're if for our listeners, like if you are a serious founder, anywhere from pre-seed to Series C, and you want to have impact, we want to provide as much like great hacks as you can to really just accelerate what you're trying to do. And so Levine and I just came together. We're like, hey, how can we put this in a really great format? And we decided, hey, why don't we try a podcast and see where it goes? So I don't know about you, man. I'm excited. There's going to be a feedback form right below this podcast. So make sure you fill it in, give us all the feedback, what we did great, what we didn't do good. We want to make sure that we constantly improve. So so let's hop to it. Okay. So I'll do my topic first, and then you can do yours. So here's my topic. I'm going to share like what I do right now for customized reach out, and how do I do it at scale? So a lot of challenges that I had before was like, how do I reach out to potential customers, leads, and how do I get their attention? And one of the ways that I did was basically like doing outbound emails. And so the first question is, well, how do you get your outbound emails? How do you customize them, and how do you make it as personal as possible? So I use like 3 tools in conjunction. I use a tool called Apollo.io, which is a lead generation tool. Like it basically has all the emails of individuals that you can pretty much get and extract out. It costs me like $50 a month, something like that. And you just basically type in like, what is the industry, what is the job title? It's basically like instead of going on LinkedIn and doing it one by one, Apollo is like this huge database of leads, and you can just filter based on what you want. So you extract all the emails from there. And then I use another tool, the second tool, which is called Mixmax. It's basically a mail merge tool. I think it's like $24 a month, something like that. And you can basically do sequenced emails. So you can take all those emails from Apollo, dump it into Mixmax, and then it just sends a bunch of emails out, mail merge. You can customize it accordingly. And the third is Loom. I record custom Loom videos or one standard Loom video, and I attach it into each email. And so when the person sees my face and says, "Oh wow, it's Ho Yin," and they have a much more higher chance of reply. So I've been able to get some pretty good reply rates and really good open rates, almost near 100% open rates with this. And anywhere between 4 and 8% for reply rate. So that's kind of my thing. Levine, have you done any of this kind of stuff before?
Yeah, I think it's really important to view it from the concept of leverage. You could have a sales team that's out there manually recruiting leads on LinkedIn. It's very unpredictable. And I find that going from a 7-figure mindset to an 8-figure mindset, this is one of the key areas that founders trip up. How do you build a predictable sales engine that works like clockworks every month, every day, every week. And there's a great book about this, about how Salesforce scaled their, it's called Nets, from 0 to 100 million US in recurring rev. And this was one of the nets where you have very, very good infrastructure to do outbound. And I think a question for you is, how do you approach this as just one of the things that you do relative to other nets, bringing in inbound B2B leads, or having events and conferences? How do you approach it almost like a portfolio? Because we know as founders that we have to hack multiple of these nets to make a successful B2B engine.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, you have to have several sources, but typically only one like works really, really well. But if you're lucky, you can get a few of them working well. So, so we've got this one. This was helpful for like outreach, but also helpful for like testing messaging. Because a lot of times, like, you might have a customer, but you don't know what the right messaging is. So you got to do that. So this is really good for that. Second is you just go on LinkedIn and then just like message them. Another channel is content, which just writing good content to bring in leads. So these are like some of the portfolio that I have to try to like bring people in, and it's got to be distributed because you can't rely on just one.
Got it. So let's go back to this one. It's pretty cool. How would you say are some of the best practices for using Apollo and Mixmax? Like, have you found that it works well for opening the lead? Have you found that it works well after, maybe on HubSpot, you can see that they've already heard about you, so slightly lower down the funnel? And have you found that it works best for conversion, or it's best for, brand building? How do you view the best way to leverage these tools?
Yeah, so we've seen it pretty good for top of funnel. And of course, if you already had a set of like customers that you've already touched, you can also do this tool. You can use this as well to basically like touch them in the middle of the bottom of the funnel. I mean, it's a bit on the manual side. Most people might use something like HubSpot to do that. But if you don't have HubSpot, which if you're starting out, you probably don't, then this is like a manual way to kind of like do that. So absolutely, yes. The key thing is customization. That's the hard part to scale, is how do you scale customization?
So how do you scale customization?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few ways to do it. And one way is you can, you can get people from like other countries that they have a more of a competitive labor market, and you can get those people to help you out with that. There are some chat GPT tools that can help you. That's my next topic, so I'm gonna save that for later.
Got it. Okay. Well, I do think that founders should find what works best for them. I think for me, this has been a very, very tough challenge to figure out how to build predictable systems. But I think that for all the founders listening out there, just getting started is really important. So download the tool, start with a small subset of people, get that first message out, and just try it, because what might work in Ho-Yin's industry or my industry will work very differently. And I think it's important to try other tools. If you're already using HubSpot, then you can have a different format sequence, and it's important to get your hands dirty. I use HubSpot and I go really deep into the sequences, and I'm very hands-on with my marketing team. Others might have someone they can delegate to, so it's important to find what works best for you. But lead gen is not going away. Like, doing effective lead gen in a world that's increasingly distracted is the difference between a good entrepreneur and a great entrepreneur. So definitely do reach out to Ho-Yin if you want more advice or feedback, or if you have other tools that can do lead gen from a 7-figure to an 8-figure business.
How about you, Levine? What you got?
I like HubSpot more than Mixmax because it's already integrated to my CRM. I like making sure that I use a variety of different events, forums, content, and then LinkedIn automation tools. I think what's really important is that we are constantly looking at different ways of doing it. For us, we're in education and talent, and so we find that decision makers are changing fast, and the way they approach things like education for their team, talent for their team is changing. So the only constant is change.
All right. What topic do you have?
One of the topics that I wanted to bring for this week was building the decision-making muscle. I call it 1% decisions. I think this Naval also talks about it as 1% decisions. As founders, I have been thinking a lot about how I could hack the 1% decisions. So how do I make sure that my time is spent on the right decisions? How do I make sure that I'm doing the things that only I could be doing to move the needle forward as a business? In short, how do I make sure I am not the bottleneck of the business? Because to all those founders out there, we can all look at ourselves and say, the only reason your business is 50, 100 times, is not 50 or 100 times bigger is probably yourself, your mindset, your limiting beliefs. So that becomes a really, really expensive mistake. And I've been thinking a lot about that. If you can turn that mistake into decisions and you could filter out, hey, is this a decision that only truly I should be making, or is this time and effort on a task that is actually going to move the needle versus, busy work or, scanning in things that is easy and comfortable, there is that day-to-day operational work, Hoyan, but how do we separate the sort of mental bandwidth to spend on business decisions that will actually push the business forward 50 or 100x?
I read this story about Warren Buffett. Like Warren Buffett actually was like saying he probably made like 10 decisions or something that basically made most of his wealth. Just 10 decisions out of his whole life of like who to invest, what to do, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's only a few decisions that make a material impact. I was talking to a friend of mine also who's also in like the VR business, and like he just focused his efforts on this one partnership that was able to get this amazing partnership and IP and stuff, and that was the humongous game changer for him, and he spent most of his time like on that decision. So, and it's hard to do that like sometimes too.
In the time in that moment, you're not sure, right? I think that founder in question, even for me, you're signing this massive partnership and it clearly makes sense. You should focus on it. But then the sales cycle is really long, or there's another partnership that comes along, shiny object syndrome, or you haven't quantified this partnership is really going to turn into real dollars, right? It might be really good for clicks and views and brand impressions. So how do you have that lens to be able to understand, like a master strategist, that partnership, or for Warren Buffett, these things really did matter?
I think it's also like just separating out more of your time to thinking and strategizing. I think that was important. That's important. And that's basically what I spent a lot of my time, like, not being so involved with the day to day. And this is really hard. This is really hard for some people. It was hard for me personally to like just extract myself from the day to day. And eventually I got there, and then I spent most of my time just like thinking and going through and writing notes and that kind of thing, thinking through a process. And, one thing also is that I've been thinking about, there's like a book called How to Decide by Andy Duke. I actually have it right here. Pretty good. It's like a book about decision making. And this book teaches you how to like make like a framework for decisions and stuff. Because it's important, like when you make a decision, sometimes you don't know if it's the outcome was actually your fault or it's just the environment itself. Most of the time you think, oh, the result was bad, so therefore you made a bad decision. But Annie Duke, she used to be like a poker player. And so what she's saying is that, well, probability wise, you might have made the right decision, but probability doesn't mean that you win for sure. There's still a small chance that you will lose. So, abstracting away what your decision was and just luck is really important, so you don't beat yourself down, and also makes you become a better decision maker in general. So I think there's like a lot of stuff like around that.
Got it.
And you need to spend more time. You need to spend more time in order to do that. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you moved from 7 figures to 8 figures. I'm in the process of doing that right now. And there's so many things that always need to be fixed, right? There's so many day-to-day, and you can't just completely extract yourself, because you need those issues to also think deeply about, right? For example, if it's an issue on lead gen that we're just talking about, you want to have time to think about, how do I build infrastructure and tools like Apollo.io. But you also don't want to be so far removed from the current leads or being part of the current sales that you don't, have an accurate view of reality. How do you kind of juggle those two polarities?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, a lot of times you have to trust the people that you work with. And a lot of it's just like reporting as well. Like you have to have a good reporting cadence and be able to like get people to get the information that you need and make sure that things are steering in the right way. So a lot of one-on-ones, of course, with your leads and stuff. Like that's very typical for a lot of startups. And then making sure you just have a really good leadership team. I mean, honestly, like that leadership team really needs to be able to communicate with you at a very high level, and obviously they need to hit their goals. And if they're unable to do that, then it gets really tough. Then you have to micromanage them and everything. If you have to micromanage them, then that's not helping you at all. So you have to find the right people that are willing to like kind of just do it quite independently. And that, typically is related to how much you pay them. Like obviously like a person who's really great and independent is obviously going to be a little bit more higher on the pricing scale, but ideally, like you just need to get good people.
So let's go into that a little bit deeper. When you are looking at a decision, right, and perhaps you can reference that book as well, there is a decision to be made about the right. Again, let's take the existing example: HubSpot versus Mixmax for a CRM sequence for you to get more leads, right? How do you, in that particular situation, make sure that your time is spent on the 1%, the actual qualitative and quantitative factors that determine whether or not you should do Mixmax versus HubSpot? Like you could spend so much time doing the demo, you could spend so much time interviewing customers, you could spend so much time interviewing your team, but how would you use, what you've learned from that book, and how would you use about concepts like leverage to make that decision for you in that business?
I mean, if it's a decision about like which platform to use, I mean, it's just gathering all the data, and then there's like certain assumptions and certain frameworks of like or truths that you believe to be true, and those assumptions the book says you need to document them so that if those assumptions are wrong, then you can go back and say, okay, these assumptions were wrong, and I need to change my worldview. But in terms of like focusing on the 1%, like it's like you got to look at all those factors that end up being educating yourself for the final decision. Like you have to look at them and then say which one's the one that actually makes the biggest impact. Is it features? Is it implementation? Is it the data? Like what is it that makes the biggest impact? And just focus on that, and then let everyone else do everything else. And
how would you
decide
approach that? How would you approach that same thing as 1% on a portfolio level? Then, we have 4 different nets that we could do B2B lead gen with. How should we approach the right way to make that decision, and also how you should use your time in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, when you evaluate all the different nets, like you try to figure out like which one is providing the most impact, which one has the most, you have the most confidence for, what's the least amount of effort. I mean, you're making hundreds, not hundreds, but many decisions a day. So if that decision doesn't really end up making that big of an impact, then you just give it to someone else to do. You just don't make the decision. You say, okay, you just come up with it. And only when it's like a major decision on like budget or persona or something really important that you would, kind of take it on yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really important to figure out how you structure your content, right? I think there's so much content out there, and it's an information overload, and for leads and lead gen, the content, it also helps build that passive touch point while you create that more active touch point that you talked about earlier. So I was tinkering around with it, and I found that you can use ChatGPT to create some content, but when it's too ChatGPT'd, if that's a word, then people can see it's not authentic. So I found a few principles. I was just writing them before our podcast today. And one of them was to make sure that's very value creative immediately. So someone should be able to read the content and be able to action some of that feedback in the next 24, 48 hours, because that's what makes it stick, right? Content becomes very perishable. Once you read it, that's that. But if you can tie that content to a specific action, it doesn't have to be something that's immediately relevant to the business, but that action is very immediately executionable. I found I had a lot higher uptick in sort of the content response rate. I think one of the other things I found was that the content should be written more casually. So it can't be too informal, but I think it can't feel like writing and reading the encyclopedia, right? So a more casual tone does seem to work well for getting a longer engagement rate. And then the third thing that's really important, especially if you're someone like you or someone like me, is that you can show contextual relevancy. So in each industry, if I'm selling talent solutions and training, how does this relate in the insurance industry? Well, it's going to be very different in the insurance industry than it would be in the banking industry or in the asset management industry or in the construction industry or in the retail industry. So given the context of these different examples is really, really important.
Yeah. I mean, content is like that age old, like, strategy. So I'm actually pretty, for me, I'm pretty, like, my content game isn't that great. So I've been like working on improving my content game. I kind of realized that content was really important a little bit more later, in my sort of journey and startup journey. I didn't realize how important it was until really like, maybe like last year. So I think like for me, I think the toughest thing about content is that it's everyone's kind of written a lot of content already, and you have to up your game and ready content that's like really, really valuable. And I think with ChatGPT, the content game is going to be even harder because you're going to get all this like flooding of ChatGPT like content. It's going to be super easy to produce content, almost zero cost. That I think the basic level content will be very easy to produce and easy to see, and then the really good value, like that provides a lot of value content, would probably need more human intervention. And I think that's good. I think that's good for people, because that means people will be focused and will be curated more around higher quality content and not just like listicles. You know what I mean? Like it will be more focused on quality. And I think that's a good thing. I think so. I think content. I think people are like, well, ChatGPT and all that kind of stuff that might get rid of like written content. I actually think it won't. I actually think it won't. It might for maybe the latter bottom 50%. Maybe those people, they're not going to be written by people. But I think the top stuff, I think, is still going to be written by like specialist experts, those types of people that maybe at least not for the next few years, I don't think, but we'll see.
One of the other topics that I had in mind was infrastructure related to content. So I'm sure you've seen some tools as well. There's so many tools out there for content, from video to audio to text to, I would love your advice, man. I am looking at so many different tools and the possibilities are quite endless, but our time is quite finite. So, any hacks you have on infrastructure to build a proper content engine and up our content game?
I mean, there's several ways. One is I'm looking for, actually, this is really interesting because I've been looking for some agencies that use a lot of these tools, like these new AI tools, and it hasn't been that easy to find them actually. And so you can probably build the whole funnel yourself. There's like a whole bunch of AI content writing tools. Like there's a lot of them. And you can kind of string together a lot of these different AI tools, and they're all driven by ChatGPT or GPT-4 or whatever, some form of that. And then they like help you find the keywords very easily. They help you, basically come up with your strategy. They help you do like a lot. The one that I've seen that is pretty interesting is scalenot.com. Scale and then like scale nut, sorry. Scale Nut. That one's been on my radar, at least, for being a product that's like been very they do like pretty much like the entire SEO pipeline. So it's pretty it's pretty good. Like plan, research, optimize, write, SEO, everything. That's something that I've kind of seen some people like talk about. But yeah, and you could probably just hire like maybe a freelancer or someone, and you can run your entire content strategy from there.
Yeah, I was looking at Jasper or Jasper.ai. I think this company went crazy, became a unicorn within a year or something. And it was pretty cool because they had different content samples, and then there was helping you write content from, different themes, different formats, different tones, different intentions. Then it was even line by line, paragraph by paragraph. And then there was like elements of repurposing the same piece, but then for LinkedIn, for Twitter, for, Instagram, for various different content channels. So I think that was a pretty cool idea to kind of look at one that can build your whole infrastructure stack. Don't just approach content as I've got to post this piece of content in terms of a horizontal, but also on a vertical. Like, hey, am I posting on multiple verticals, looking at the impressions, looking at what is capturing people's attention, and just making sure it's really value add, because I think when it adds real value to people, that word of mouth automatically generates people resharing it, talking about it, engaging with it, commenting on it.
I think creating really good value posts is great value post is hard because sometimes it's either you write it or you get an expert to write it. So it's been, or the one startup guy which I spoke to, he was really good at SEO. He basically told me to hire like journalist grads from Serbia. Like you go to Serbia and you hire a journalism grad, because a journalist will do a lot of research, and that's what you want. And then that is where like the good content kind of comes out. So this is one person, this guy actually recommended that. So that was pretty interesting. And their pricing is really competitive.
What's it called?
What he was telling me to do, and I haven't done this yet.
Oh, to find these grads. Okay.
Yeah. Like go to like a Serbian university job board and somehow write in Serbian.
Yeah, I guess the same could apply to building journalistic grads, even in other markets, Philippines, Malaysia. I think, it's really then a question of finding a good grad, making sure there's a good sample, and just being okay that they will probably use some ChatGPT, but then there's still that journalistic integrity, and that sort of depth and substance, because a lot of stuff you read is just crap. It's so substanceless, and it sucks because we only have a limited amount of cognitive bandwidth, right?
It's not deep enough. You're right. Depth of an article is also like one measurement that people use to measure like the quality of the content. And that's something that's like it's definitely missing, and something that ChatGPT doesn't at the moment doesn't seem to go deep enough sometimes. And you really have to steer it to go deeper, I feel like.
Well, I think as we wrap up, like we always do, what is one hack that you've been working on or looking at in the last 7 days? And then I'll also wrap up with mine.
So I've been trying to hack a way of using this one tool called Zyro, Zyro, to basically create landing pages for just any kind of like product idea or anything. And Zyro basically embeds like ChatGPT inside. So then you can create the photos, create the headlines, and very easily kind of put everything together. So basically you don't need, and you can launch it. So it's like Webflow, but with AI in it. And so you can very quickly like launch a page, probably within a day or two, probably less than a day if you wanted to. And I think that's really cool because it really allows you to test many ideas very quickly. Either yourself as a founder or with your marketer, and just kind of quickly throw something out there that looks pretty decent quality and has copy that like speaks to a specific audience and to a specific persona in a really, decent way. So that's what I've been looking on right now.
Fantastic.
How about yourself, Levine?
Yeah, this last few weeks I've been looking at hacking away at my content. So I've been writing a lot of content on LinkedIn. And I think the hack that I've learned is that you don't really want to write content that is stuff that you don't get, right? Like I don't go in pretending like I've already built an 8-figure company. I've built a 7-figure company. I'm in the process there. So I documented, some of the stuff I've learned as a 7-figure founder, kind of overcoming some of the challenges and opportunities to become an 8-figure. The other hack was, I did a 54-hour fast last week, and it was pretty insane, and rather than going and writing a piece of content about all the benefits of fasting, I kind of just talked about the benefits of fasting that I felt and how it helped me with my cognitive load and how it helped me with my structuring of my clarity of thought. Right. There was another post I wrote about walking meetings last Friday. Right. And I found out that I was actually doing almost 100,000 steps extra a month. Right. Just by doing walks with founders and entrepreneurs and, people that I do business with, and even my one-on-ones with my C-suite, just doing walk and talks. And that was pretty amazing because, it wasn't like I was trying to become a advocate or a thought authority on walking meetings. It was very authentic. People that, know me realize that I really do suggest walking meetings more than a coffee. That for me. And most importantly, I kind of just shaped my own conversation, and I could see that the engagement rate was a lot higher because it was true and authentic. So I'd say maybe less of a hack, more of a realization is that I want to dive deeper into topics that I personally care about, that I personally am experiencing. And then you feel a lot less pressure to come across as an expert on fasting. Of course, I'm not an expert on it, but I've done it for 54 hours. That's almost 2.5 days. That's intense. It requires a lot of willpower and discipline. And I was able to just kind of talk about what I've learned along the way. And it was very valuable to like 7 different founders from Founder Circle that reached out to me privately, asking me more questions. So I think that's been very valuable.
So when you did your fast, you didn't eat anything at all? Like not even in the evening? And you didn't at all?
Water and tea. In fact, I'm on 24 hours right now. I haven't eaten anything since last night. I feel amazing.
So you only drink water or tea, and then after the fast, like did you just go eat? Like eat like a huge cheat meal?
No, you have to be careful. So if you do like 54 hours, 72 hours, you can't just jump in and eat, Indian curry or, you have to be very careful because your body's in a state of ketosis. So you need to slowly plow into food sources that are quite light and easy. I found bananas, potatoes are simple. You don't want to go into a very carb heavy pasta and rice diet right after a 72-hour fast. Greek yogurt is pretty good. Blueberries, very simple. Veggies, some juices, and you kind of slowly up it. Don't go straight for a medium rare steak, for example.
I've never fasted, so I'll definitely may ask you some pointers for that.
Maybe you should try it. Yeah, try and hack a fast. I would start with something like 18 or 24 hours. You will feel hungry. You will feel weak the first time, but there is so much benefit and advice. And if you think about how the human body worked, we would go out hunting and sometimes you wouldn't find food, right? So that'd be 24 or 36 hours. And the next day you'd have to go hunt, but you'd still be required to use heavy energy. So you actually feel great when you work out on 36 hours of an empty stomach.
Well, thank you so much, man. This is our first episode. We did it.
Thank you. To all the founders out there in Founder Circle, do let us know. We've got a ton of podcast episodes planned ahead. Want to make sure it's super valuable to you. We're hitting close to 1,000 founders, and it's just been an absolute honor and pleasure for Ho-Yin and I to see the growth of the community. As a reminder, the 2 core values for Founder Circle is that we want to help each other grow, really, really become the most legendary versions of ourselves, personally and professionally. And we'd love to help each other give back to each other. It's very rewarding for founders to be there supporting each other. It's a pretty tough journey, continues to be a tough journey. Always is. You don't ever stop realizing how tough it can be, but that's really the joy as well when you can go out at these tough journeys and see them as adventures with fellow founders as well. So we're in it together, and let us know how we can support you. And thank you again, Ho Yen.
Thanks, guys. And remember, there's a feedback form right below the podcast. Fill it out and tell us what you like, what you didn't like. All right. See you guys on the next one. Thanks.